Much love is what we need upon us. Let them come together with the unity among us. Unity, it's a unity. Yana, this a good work, you know what I'm saying?
Umoja ni nguvu, utengano udhaifu, tukisimama.
Hello, thanks for joining us. My name's Zach, I'm a film reporter at Deadline, and I'm going to be moderating this panel. I guess to start, I'd ask my two lovely panelists to explain who they are and what they do.
My name is John Gosier. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Film Hedge. We finance film and TV projects through what's called debt financing, up to $10 million per production. We do both scripted TV and film. I also run another company called Southbox Entertainment, which is more of a traditional production company where we develop projects and finance them internally. So the way you can think about that is one company does debt financing, the other company does equity financing.
Cool. Hi, I'm Alex Rideau. I'm a producer based in Dakar, Senegal, in West Africa. I've been living there for the last 20 years, and I've been producing content for the last 10 years, more or less. I'm working, I founded a production company called Kewu, who's specializing in producing premium content in French-speaking Africa. And we're now part of Media One Africa. Media One Africa, as I will explain, is the Media One who's developing production and distribution activities on the African continent.
And so the title of this panel is From Pitch to Screen. So we're kind of talking about how we're developing projects. So I guess both of you have bags of experience, and I wondered if we should probably start by explaining how films are packaged and financed traditionally. How has this traditionally worked?
Please go ahead.
The process of packaging a film is one that sometimes is new to a lot of filmmakers. They don't really understand what it means. It's not just making up your pitch deck or your log, coming up with your log line and your target cast and all sorts of things. The packaging of the film is really laying out a plan, a production plan, a finance plan, a sort of a strategy to get this film made. And so you can have the ideal cast, you can have your scripts and all the creative assets. But if you don't have a solid plan, what they call a finance plan, then it's not a complete package. And when I say finance plan, doesn't mean you have to have all the money. You just need to have a plan on where that money is going to come from. So in a lot of places, for instance, in South Africa, I'm not sure about Dakar, but you have, or Senegal, you have tax credits that you can apply for. Up to 50% in South Africa. In the U.S., in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm from, it's 30% that you can, tax credits that you can get. Tax credits are a way of kind of reverse financing a film. You can apply for these tax credits, which don't pay out until you finish the movie. But if you find a group that will give you money up front, secured by those tax credits, then now you have cash for that movie. And it's roughly the same amount that the tax credit's worth. So 30% or 50% of your movie can be covered using this other money that you didn't have to raise from investors. You don't have to come up with it yourself. You can use this strategy to get that money into your production. That's all part of packaging, just figuring out where the money to finance this film is going to come from, especially when you get into films that are larger budget than, let's say, over $1 million.
Yeah, correct. And as a matter of fact, this is one of the major issues that we have till now in West and Central Africa, is that we don't have tax credit yet. Still, most of local governments haven't put in place yet systems that allow to finance local movies. And as a matter of fact, it is a problem, because a lot of people are wondering what is African TV series or what is African movies, and I will be keen to say that it is movies that are made with African money. Yeah. But that doesn't exist, or that doesn't exist as it should be existing. There's systems in South Africa, systems tax rebates as well in Mauritius Island, small ones in Morocco, and that's it. On all the continent. A continent that is that takes 10 hours flying from north to south and 10 hours flying from west to east. Only 3 countries with tax rebate systems. So yeah, to get back to your questions, packaging movie, of course, and TV series, I mean TV content is about finding the right way to finance it. And of course, there's the idea, and you will have, and we are always looking for talents. So directors and comedians that are going to convince funders, people who have the money to pitch in. So, and in our environment, West and Central Africa, again, that is bigger than the Northern America, Canada plus United States, and more populated. Resource is still scarce, very difficult to fundraise and to find investors. Public money, non-existent. So mostly, most producers are so innovating and so great innovators in the way they are packaging their content. And finding ways to sell them and to fund them. So I guess we get back to that right after.
Yeah, no, both make really interesting points, and I guess my follow-up here, and I'm sure that would be what you guys sitting out there would be thinking is, so if there is no tax credit, if there isn't many resources, where do we find the money? Where do people find the money? And have you got any sort of like case studies that you can sort of share with us where there's been successful financing on the continent?
I mean, unfortunately, because I think it is not fortunate, abroad. Most money still come from abroad, still come from Europe, still come from America. And this is why 2 things happen. Not only the industry is not developing at the pace it should be, compared to the unlimited resource of talent you have on the continent, but also the point of view, the African point of view, is not respected or well depicted in the production, because money decides what to tell. But lots of producers, and most of them are based in Nigeria, are doing amazing job as being like as producing content that they can sell quickly. You know, everyone knows about the Nollywood economy. In Senegal, which is very famous for its small audiovisual sector, people found their content with YouTube. It's amazing, but they do it. So they produce like 50 episodes of 26 minutes for less than $50,000. That's the way the economy works, mostly. And for instance, I have to jungle with fundings who come from Europe, who come from America. I rely on private foundations. Foundations are funding African content. I rely on Pan-African TV stations, and we call Pan-African TV stations that are based in Paris, such as TV5 or CANNES+, who are the main funders of content in West Africa. Which is great. Thanks to them, we are producing cool content and entertaining like millions of people. But this is money that comes from France. So this is, and when we go to argue this with governments, local governments in different countries, they understand, but it takes time and lots of savoir-faire to put in place these systems that eventually one day will allow African industry, film and TV, to develop really from a local point of view and with local standards. Sorry.
No worries. No, I think that's all great points. I think, and I loved something that you said in your remarks, which was money decides, right? So the reason that is because nothing happens in this industry without someone paying for it. And that whoever's paying for it, or that group that's paying for it, they need to be incentivized to pay. One of the things about that has made it difficult for African cinema to really develop is the lack of distribution on the continent. So if you can't reach audiences in the places where the content's coming from, there's no outlet for that content. So the reason why it's hard to raise money is partly because the distribution methods, the infrastructure for distribution doesn't exist there like it exists elsewhere. Now there are groups that are trying to solve for distribution, but it's a big problem. But going back to the original question, which is where is the money? Well, one of the reasons why I brought up tax credits is because you can be a filmmaker in one country and leverage tax credits in another. You just have to be able to shoot that movie in that other country. So you'd have to get on the plane and go to wherever those tax credits are, shoot there. There's a lot of stuff that you got to figure out, whether those tax credits are transferable, because if your production company is based in another country and you go shoot here, can you transfer it to, do you get the benefits of the tax credits in the country where you're coming from? If not, then you've got to create a structure to receive that tax credit, to monetize that tax credit, and to apply it to your film. But it's not just about tax credits. You can also advance sell your movie to what are called sales agents. So you can, when you have a complete package of your film, which includes all the things that we just talked about, you can take that package, that plan, to these groups that are called sales agents, many of which are here this week at the film festival in the Marché du Film. And you can, in some cases, close a deal with them where they pre-sell your movie. And what that means is they are saying to you, we understand distribution, we understand where we can take this film internationally, and we therefore know there's money to be made here. And so here's the part that we're going to play for this production. That becomes another piece of another resource that you can apply to your film to get groups like my own, who will look at that paper, whatever that number is, and we will advance you money based on what the sales agents have effectively told you they can do with your movie. It's like a promise. And then we look at that promise and we're like, okay, there's money here, they've agreed to it, the filmmakers agreed to it, so we'll advance money because we know these two parties want to make this movie happen. Similar thing with distributors. You can have distributors who will give you a deal before you make your movie, and we can do all those same things. Now, all of this applies to a certain portion of the industry. It tends to be the larger films. So you have to decide as a filmmaker, what type of film are you making? Is it a smaller budget film for the local market? Completely different strategy. Everything that I said wouldn't apply. But if you are doing something larger for an international audience, you do have the resources to shoot in other places, then everything that I just talked about applies 100%. And leveraging those three different things, tax credits, pre-sales, and distribution, you can 100% finance a movie no matter what the budget is. You just have to know the order to do things, and you have to get those deals in place.
No, I mean, that's pretty clear.
Briefly there, in your remarks, you mentioned the market here at Cannes, and obviously, yeah, we're at Cannes. It's a film festival. So I wondered, what role do film festivals have in sort of this ecosystem of financing and packaging films for African filmmakers, or what role can they have, or should they have?
For me, mostly. Meeting and discovering talents. not only it is a pleasure to watch films and to discover people who are doing amazing work, but also with the side markets, you meet producers, you meet directors, scriptwriters, and as I say, the continent is so big and so full of resource. And the networking on the continent is still at such an early age that a lot of people don't know each other's. And also there's a huge diaspora who is living in Europe or in Northern America, and that is desperately looking for coming back to work on the continent. And they need people like us, producers, who can come, listen to their needs, to what they want to do, to the projects, and to put this together. So for me, I'm meeting with all these people, and we are discussing projects. We are discussing films, we are discussing series, and we are looking for this right photo director, for this right director that will fit in one of our projects. And we make things happen. Then, and it's quite difficult because it's the last frontier in terms of cinema and West Africa, and a lot of people are still a bit skeptical or scared about coming and shooting. Which is a shame because so much thing happening there. So it needs also the opportunities of festivals to show what we are doing, to showcase. I was at a festival in Lille in March to showcase our last series, Black Santiago Club, and it was beautiful. Met lots of people say we didn't know that we were producing such contents in West Africa now. Such premium content that can travel. How can we work together? When can I come? So for me this is it. And of course we're meeting with distributors as well, because this is where a lot of money is. And distributors need to know also what kind of things are produced now on the continent. It's not the Nollywood that you know. It's not all the high elite other movies. You know, there's lots of popular content that people want to watch and amazing stories that we can share with the world. But few people know about it. So it's all about networking and letting people know about this.
Yeah, I think the role festivals play is in building relationships. One thing that's true about all of the things that we just talked about is they do require some investment in the relationship with what that group is. So you don't just go to a sales agent and say, hey, I need a deal for my movie. You do. I mean, that's where it starts, but that's usually not. It's usually not that easy. They have to understand your company. They have to understand your creative vision. They have to agree with all those things. You have to agree with them, because just because they're in the position that they're in, you don't want to take just any deal. It's got to be a good deal for your movie or for your company. Excuse me. And I think that this is a good place to start building those relationships. If not now, you know, like let's say you meet a distributor now. Maybe they don't work with you on this film, but because you nurture the relationship, the next film they become your partner. Or maybe you start working with a particular sales agent, or you're thinking about it. The other way to leverage relationships is just because they're there, you don't, like, what background have you done on them? At a film festival, you can ask, like, have you worked with these guys before? What are they like? Are they thorough? Do they follow through on their deals? Are they helpful? You can ask other filmmakers who've worked with them in the past. So the most efficient way to do all of that is at a festival like this. Once everybody goes back home, it's a lot harder to start asking those questions and getting the background on the different groups that you may be working with. And then the other thing is there's a lot of serendipity at conferences like this. You never know who you're going to meet walking up and down these streets, or when you're at one of the clubs or after parties that are legendary here. And those types of relationships are invaluable because there's no way to plan for them. If you meet that one person who can change everything for your career as a filmmaker, all it takes is that one moment where you meet, and for there to be some sort of connection or synergy or business similarities, and there you go. And that's something you couldn't plan for. If you weren't here, it wouldn't happen. And it's like that's part of the magic of just getting a whole bunch of people in one place at one time who are focused on the same thing, which is making movies.
What type of things are you both as producers and people who pick up projects? What kind of things are you interested in investing in?
I want people to be entertained and to watch content. What I mean is that I'm looking for things that I think will please people, the public, and right now, because there's no media metrics and very few research, I guess that nobody or very few people know exactly what the African public is looking for. And thus, there's very few producers that are giving what the public is really expecting. And so, to answer your questions, I'm trying to find content and reading lots of scripts that I think will be popular. This is what I'm looking for, and I'm happy when people are happy.
I'll speak about my production company first because it's easier to understand maybe. So as a production company at Southbox, what we look for are projects that, we kind of have more of a vision of the type of content that we want to make or help sort of get out into the world. And these tend to be, genre films, so action, thrillers, comedy, etc., that are focused on an international audience, but that have the packaging and the resources of major Hollywood productions. So, we're talking, $15 to $30 million movies that are focused on an international audience. And I say internationals because a big part of what we do is look for stories that work or that are inspired by Africa or Africans, but we want to put those, we want to tell those stories through the lens of what a lot of African filmmakers don't have, which is the resources of Hollywood. And that's sort of bridging the gap between this market that lacks resources and this market that has lots of resources. So that's a big part of our creative vision at Southbox. We're working on a $15 million feature right now called Collateral Data that we're shooting in Atlanta, Georgia. That is, it's a movie about African protagonists. And knock on wood, we've got some big announcements to make related to that project soon. So I use that as an example that's just kind of what our North Star is as a production company. At my other company, Film Hedge, we're not a bank, but you can think of us like a bank in the sense that producers come to us when they have all the things I talked about before, pre-sales, tax credits, distribution, and those are just pieces of paper. Those are deals. Those are agreements between you and your distributor or your sales agent. We turn those deals into cash. We advance you the money. And yes, you could go to a distributor and get the money from them. You could. That's probably a question people have. But the reason you don't is because if they're distributing it and they're financing it, well, why do they need to give you any control over your own production? They don't, because they paid for it. And they're giving you the access to get it out there. So now you have no leverage with them. And so coming to a private financier like us, it allows you to do the deal with them, but keep your leverage as a creator and keep your control.
I'll come to some questions in a sec if you guys might have some or want to think of some. But one more question for me is, how do people get your attention?
Well, for us, it's easy. Both companies have a web form. You just go to our website, you could submit. I will tell you, so for Film Hedge, that's how everybody gets in front of us. That's how they submit projects, whether it's A-list director, producer, or whether it's someone who's just starting out in the industry, it usually starts there. Word of mouth never hurts. Referrals from entertainment attorneys, agents, talent agencies, etc. So all that works, but we made it even easier. You can just go to the website and submit some information. At Southbox, it's the same thing. However, like I said before, it's like we have a creative vision, and so people submit a lot of stuff, but if it doesn't fit that vision, it's like it's completely irrelevant. You're wasting your time. It's like we're doing one thing, we're telling one type of story, and that's all we need to do, because we don't have to do everything. There's other groups, there's other producers. They can do, you know, they might be interested, but for us, it's this what one of my friends called the transatlantic connection between working with creators on the continent or IP that comes from the continent and major studios and distributors and quote-unquote Hollywood. And when I say Hollywood, I'm talking about the big film industry, which includes, you know, it might include the big production companies out of London. It's not just LA, it's just, you know, the industry.
Yeah, website as well, and emails, and word of mouth. We receive stories from all across French-speaking Africa. People know how to find us, and we have peels and peels of scripts that we are reading. People send us emails, and we are looking mostly for authentic stories that can be popular in Africa and can then travel globally. And stories that are touching and that also are teaching something important to us on the crisis that we're going through in our contemporary world. So there's always entertainment and also lessons to learn in all the stories that we're looking for. And yes, and more people know where to find us. We're in Dakar. It's the center of the Atlantic world.
Awesome. Does anybody want to ask a question?
So you mentioned that I'm talking about the film hedge. I have a question for, what's your name again? Sorry.
John Gosier.
Okay, so a question for you. What's your business model? How exactly do you get money? If you said that you wouldn't want to go through a distribution company because they take everything, so how do you make money? What's your business model?
Yeah, so when I say, I didn't quite say that, but when you say they take everything,
right?
What I mean is control of your production.
Right.
So you still might get paid, but you might get paid with them telling you what to do on the production that you brought to them.
And you're saying that you guys would never do that?
Yeah, we don't care. We're like a bank.
Understood.
Like, does a bank care what you do when you get a loan?
Not at all. Generally no, but I'm just...
So the idea is we look at the plans that you would submit, the finance plan, your creative vision, all those types of things. But really what we're looking for is there an agreement in place between you and the distributor? We know the distributor is gonna, if they are committing to you to distribute this film, we know that we're now in business with them as well. And we know that they tend to have deeper pockets than the filmmaker. And so really that's who's paying us, is so we advance money to you. They're gonna put out your film and distribute it to the world. And before that happens, they have to buy the completed film from you. Before they can buy it from you, you have to make the film. So we're advancing you money to make the film. Once your film is done, they pay you for the rights to then distribute it to the world. And in between the transaction between you and the distributor pays out all the debt on the film. That includes us. Now we're out. You can go out and release your film, and it could go out and make tons of money. Doesn't matter to us because we just got paid in that first transaction. We're not in it beyond that.
Understood.
And so the next question might be, well, what does that transaction look like for us?
Exactly.
It's simple interest. So we're giving you a loan. There's interest on that loan. It's fixed.
Is there a minimum? I mean, before you're interested, is there, like, should we say we don't even talk to you unless we need 25 million for our project, or 5 million for our project, or 2 million, or 1 million? What is the minimum that we would even, like, I'm going to call Film Hedge, but there's no use in calling them unless you're calling them about a project that, that needs this much funding?
Yeah, so great question. So we tend to focus on projects between 5 and 30 million. 35 million, 5 and 35 million. However, we can go as low as $1 million. So we won't do projects under $1 million if the total budget is not above $1 million.
And that just depends on whether you love the project or not.
No, it has nothing to do with that.
Got you.
So I'll tell you why we don't do projects under $1 million. They're harder to distribute.
Of course.
So if there's no distributor, there's no one for us to be in business with to fund you. And so that's why we don't do it. You know, so it might be, there's all sorts of beautiful movies that are made under $1 million, but they tend to be shorts, they tend to be very independent projects, they tend to have to get really creative to get out into the world. That's a whole different, you know, business to be in, and there's no one for us to make money from, because again, like I said, we're not charging you as the filmmaker, we're giving you money, and then your distributor is then paying us back.
Understood. I have a question for Mr. Rito as well, and then I'll leave you guys alone.
Yeah, hi.
So if I have projects that are like interested, I mean, I have clients that are interested in working in Africa. I manage artists and producers and that sort of thing, and I'm curious about like what your incentive is in Africa. Like, why would we call you to work in Africa, in Dakar, as opposed to anyone else?
That's an interesting question. You will call me because I think I'm a producer, and
Okay.
I might be one of the only one, at least in French-speaking Africa, who knows how to finance.
And do you have a minimum as well, or?
Yeah, I would not go under $1 million.
Okay. And maximum? Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
Maximum. The problem is that, as I said, or tried to communicate today, the economy is not there yet for maximum such as the ones that we have in Europe or in America. But my max would be, I will know how to do something up till 4 to 5 million.
And how much control will you have over the film?
But again, this is because this would be what I call African productions.
Okay.
There will not be international production. If we are talking about international production,
I'm talking
we'll use
international.
exactly the same kind of incentives and systems that are in place elsewhere in the world. And that's something that we know also how to do. But it's just that the kind of content we are producing, creating right now are what I call totally African-made content from beginning till end. Everything is created on the continent and funded on the continent.
Understood. Thank you both for your time.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think they were all really interesting questions. I think we might be running out of time, but one of the last questions I wanted to ask was, I guess from where you guys started to where you are now, what do you think African filmmaking is in a better place, or what is your sort of assessment of that, and where do you see it going in the future in terms of financing and the business side? So
again, this is quite difficult to answer such a question because Africa is huge, and I don't know what would be African films. I can talk about the French-speaking part of Africa, at least that reduces a little bit the scope, and I would say that we are now at a stage. And I don't know if it's going to take maybe up to 5 to 6 years, where we are going to be able to say that there was a beginning, there was a before and an after. This is a moment in time or history on this part of the world where things are changing at a quite fast pace, and where the industry is coming together and is really starting to work as an industry. Money finally is coming. The systems that we were discussing, tax shelters or crédit d'impôt, as we say in French, are beginning slowly trying to be experimented in some of the countries. The level of producing, the level of directing, the level of acting, the level of writing is rising at a huge space. So I guess that yes, talking about French-speaking Africa, this is going to be the next big thing, and this is where the next big stories are going to come from. 5 to 6 years.
So I think So I agree with all of that, and I think really what one of the things that I think about people, well, that people have to remember is when you talk about content coming out of the continent, it's really, 4 different markets, right? You've got Francophone Africa, you've got the North African region. Even within that region, you don't have uniformity of what works, and then you have Sub-Saharan Africa. You don't have uniformity there, but they're similar enough that you can kind of group them. And then everybody thinks about the 4th one as South Africa. I don't. I think the 4th one is the diaspora. It's like people around the world who are African now living in London, living in North America, in Canada, and so on. And so all of those different groups will respond to different types of content. But for all of those groups, except for the last one, distribution is broken. It's really hard to reach people in North Africa. It's really hard to reach people with films distribution. I mean, there's other ways to reach them communication-wise, but I'm talking about distributing films. The distribution in North Africa, the distribution in Francophone Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa are equally broken. Where you do have great distribution to an African audience is internationally, because you can reach the diaspora who can then reach their own families back home. And so that's one of the reasons why we focus on that audience. And I think that's becoming increasingly attractive to major distributors and streamers and studios, because they know they have to solve this problem. You can't just keep speaking to the same audiences over and over, not because it's morally right. They don't care about that. They can't keep doing it because it doesn't lead to growth, and they do care about money. So, they've got to figure out ways to grow into new audiences. And so I think you will increasingly see more demand for African content.
One thing that reminded me of really quickly was language. How important is language to you in the content, and how does that shape what can be made and where it can be distributed? Because obviously you're in the Francophone world, increasingly in the English-speaking part of Africa also. So what role does language play?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's related to the things that I just said. It's like you're looking for commonality between large groups of people so that you can reach as many people as possible with the content that you're making. Language is a barrier to do that if they don't all speak the same language. And so I really think it's related to the bifurcation of the market that I just talked about. You could equally apply language to it, and it would be the exact same answer.
And at the same time, it's totally correct. And at the same time, there's more and more need and people want to watch content in local language. So it's bizarre, because at the same time you will want to produce in English for distribution or to produce in French for the same reason, but at the same time more and more people locally on the continent or even from the diaspora are looking for content in local language. So there's something that will be, there's an equation here that will require some work to be solved.
Cool. And I'm just going to keep going because I have more questions. Anyways, streamers, that's sort of one of the biggest changes in the industry. Okay, do you not ask? Sorry, I'll keep my question in a second.
Yeah, sorry, I'm late. I'm just back from the market. I would like to know how Film Age work with Africa.
So there's 2 answers to that question. So the first answer is we don't particularly look at any location. You can be a filmmaker from anywhere and submit to Film Heads right now. Like it doesn't matter where you are. What does matter is things that this room, I spoke to about how we work with filmmakers is we look for deals that they have in place with sales agents, with distributors, or with tax credit authorities. Those are all things that we can turn into cash for a filmmaker. And so a filmmaker based anywhere in the world can get those things. It can be harder to get those things if you're based on the continent, if you don't travel, but if you do, then it's the same game that everybody's playing. The second answer to your question is, will we do anything specifically dedicated for Africa? And the answer to that is, at some point in the future, we may look at different regions around the world where we can come up with new financial products. But we're a finance company, and so we don't think about it as how are we helping filmmakers in these different regions. It's like, what is the financial structure we can put up that's sustainable in this region, in this region, in this region, and then that will allow us to then support filmmakers in those regions. But so we have, but that's not something we are. That's something that's in our plans as we grow as a company. We are only 3 years old, so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm asking because, as you may know, in France, for example, the dynamic is quite particular for us as producer to produce African content, and we are not looking mostly first about profitability, but we need to have like an indie approach, mostly for the CNC, because they lack an indie approach, author approach, where the profitability and the worldwide audience is not the first target when we produce something. So yeah, I was wondering for US how you deal with it, and because Africa is quite particular, mostly divided between Francophone speaking country and Anglophone English-speaking country, so yeah.
Yeah, what you said in there, though, is something that, this is why we don't do anything dedicated yet related to the question that you're asking for, is because you do need to take more of an indie approach for certain parts of the world. We don't take an indie approach as a finance company. So we're solving a different problem in the industry. And so eventually we'll get to solve problems for these true independent projects. But right now we're sort of in between, with the other side of independent is still studio made or studio distributed, streamer distributed projects that are under $50 million that are independently financed. That's where we sit in the market. But independently financed can also include projects that are smaller than what we would look at. So, but it's just a different side of the industry that we sit on. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. And sorry for my delay.
The question that I was going to ask is how have streamers changed the ecosystem of financing African films? Because Amazon is making a bunch of stuff on the continent, particularly in Nigeria. Netflix has worked with filmmakers like Mati Diop and people like that. So how has streaming changed things?
At least again for Francophone Africa, it's quite early to talk about it, because it's only starting. Streamers in Francophone Africa are not proactive yet. They are not investing, buying content. We sold a show on Netflix, but only one show, and we have hard time, and all producers, apart again from for Nigeria, but it's English-speaking country, to convince Netflix or Amazon yet to pitch in. I think it's a bit too early at this stage. It's coming. We are witnessing progress, but it's coming. But it's difficult. One of the reasons, it's not because they dislike content or because they are not interested. Of course not. It's because there are not a lot of subscriptions sold yet in this part of the world. And why is it so? It's not because people don't want to be watch Netflix or Amazon and other platforms. It's because they do so through mobile connections. and mobile connection, 4G or 5G, is still very expensive. When I broadcast one of my show, for instance, on a platform, it could be like a platform, a TV5 platform, or it could be YouTube. See that nearly 90% of the people who are watching the shows are connecting with their mobile phone. So yeah, as long as data is going to be expensive, and as long as streamers won't make deals with mobile operators, as they are trying to do in Kenya, for instance, or in South Africa, where you can subscribe to your mobile phone and have 20-something hours of free streaming on Netflix. Something like they are experimenting deals like this. As long as we won't have that in Francophone Africa, I guess that not enough people will connect to Netflix or to Amazon and the other streaming platforms, and they won't invest as much as we're expecting to. So it's coming together. It's changing things. It will changing because we have more people to go to and to pitch project to. So it's really enriching the competition. It's not only about Canal Plus and TV5. Now there's also other streamers, but it's still a very early stage of that process. You want to say something?
I want to.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. We're done. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Love is what we need upon us. Let them come together with the unity among us. You and I think why it's a unity. Yeah, now this a good work. You know what I'm saying?
Umoja ni nguvu, utengano udhaifu, tukisimama jitoe